Good morning everyone. I'm here today to discuss the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium as a mechanism of evolution. Our presentation will explore how this mathematical model explains the genetic equilibrium in a population and how it affects the formation of new species. Let's dive into the topic. Evolution is the ongoing process of change in species over time that has resulted in the varied life forms that exist on Earth. Natural selection is the primary driver of this evolution, whereby traits which are beneficial to an organism's survival and reproduction are more likely to be passed down to subsequent generations. Other mechanisms of evolution such as mutation, genetic drift, and gene flow can also influence changes in the genetics of organisms over time. Through the mechanism of evolution, biologists gain a better understanding of the natural world. Natural selection has been a critical factor in how species adapt to their environment and propagate effectively. Other evolutionary mechanisms such as mutation, genetic drift, and gene flow have also played a role in the diversity of life on Earth. By investigating these various evolutionary forces, researchers can gain a deeper understanding of the evolution of species and how they react to alterations in the environment. Evolution is a complex process that cannot always be explained by what is happening in the present. A range of mechanisms such as genetic drift, founder effect, gene flow, natural selection, and others can lead to changes in the traits of a population over time, and eventually to the evolution of new species. This can result in diversity within a species over time. Exploring Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, a principle which states that the allelic frequencies in a population will remain constant from generation to generation under certain conditions, is the focus today. First proposed independently by British mathematician G. H. Hardy and German physician W. Weinberg in the early 1900s, we will discuss the conditions which must be met for this equilibrium to be maintained and its effect on modern genetics. We'll discuss one of the most important phenomena in population genetics: random mating. To understand this, we must look at the size of the population. A large population size increases the probability of random mating, as it increases the chance of different individuals meeting and mating. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is the mathematical expression of the conditions for random mating to exist. With random mating, the genetic structure of a population stays the same from generation to generation, which is the cornerstone of evolution, thus making random mating an important part of organic evolution. Organic evolution is a phenomenon where living organisms undergo alterations over the course of time. These alterations are largely impacted by factors such as the environment and the genetic differences between organisms. To understand this process, it is imperative to be cognizant of the various capabilities of organisms to survive in their designated environment as well as their potential to reproduce. Those able to thrive in their environment will have a greater chance of reproducing successfully. Conversely, creatures with inferior niches can ultimately become extinct. Consequently, recognizing differential reproductive success as an integral part of organic evolution is of tremendous significance. Organic evolution is an intriguing process which living species experience. Age can be significant in this process. Every part of a population should possess the same age and, when individuals reproduce, that age should remain constant over the population. This guarantees that the future generation of individuals also have the same age, to ensure organic evolution can proceed. Organic evolution is a concept which is essential to biology. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is a principle which helps us comprehend how evolution happens. This principle expresses that, as long as certain requisites are accomplished, the frequencies of alleles and genotypes in a population remain the same from one generation to the next. Deviations away from these conditions may bring about alterations in allele and genotypic frequency that can result in organic evolution. The Hardy-Weinberg equation is a mathematical model that describes genetic equilibrium in a population, taking into account the frequencies of alleles in a gene pool. It is used to measure the probability of different genotypes present in a stable population, such as homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and recessive. The Hardy-Weinberg equation states that if certain conditions are met, the frequencies of alleles in a gene pool will remain constant from generation to generation. It can be used to calculate the frequency of dominant and recessive alleles in a population and is a key tool in evolutionary biology for observing changes in allele frequencies over time. Organic evolution refers to the process by which living organisms change over time. The Hardy-Weinberg principle states that the frequency of alleles in a population will remain constant from one generation to the next, unless acted upon by external factors. This equation allows us to calculate the genotypic frequencies of homozygous dominant, heterozygous and homozygous recessive individuals. Understanding this equation is key to understanding organic evolution. Organic evolution is the process by which living organisms change over time. The Hardy-Weinberg principle is a mathematical equation which allows us to calculate the genotypic frequencies of homozygous dominant, heterozygous and homozygous recessive individuals in a population. This equation is used to demonstrate how external factors can cause allele frequencies to change over time, and is essential for our understanding of organic evolution. Organic evolution is a concept that is based on the idea that changes in the frequency of genes within a population over time are caused by natural selection, mutation, and genetic drift. This concept is based on a mathematical formula stating that if P plus Q, 2 equals 1, then P plus Q equals 1. In this equation, P is the frequency of the dominant allele, Q is the frequency of the recessive allele, P2 is the frequency of the homozygous dominant genotype, 2pq is the frequency of the heterozygous dominant genotype, and Q2 is the frequency of the recessive genotype. In simpler terms, organic evolution is the study of how these allele frequencies can change over time. The slide focuses on the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium and its effects on allelic frequencies in a population. The equilibrium implies that the population remains constant, yet allelic frequencies may evolve over time. This understanding grants insight into population evolution and the roles of individual alleles, which may change over the course of time. The mathematical model of genetic equilibrium has 4 distinct parts. The first requirement is that the sum of the squares of both dominant and recessive forms of a gene should add up to 1. The second part states that the sum of the squares of both alleles should equal 0. The third part states that the sum of the alleles must be greater than 0, and the fourth part states that the difference between the dominant and recessive forms of a gene must equal the sum of the two. By considering this model, it is easier to understand the concept of organic evolution. Given the complexity of the topic, it is important to answer this question correctly. The Hardy-Weinberg principle states that the frequency of alleles in a population remains constant from one generation to the next, given certain conditions. However, the wrong statement in this principle is that all the members of a population should not be homogeneous in age. This is incorrect, as all members of the population should have similar age distributions in order for this principle to be met. Biological evolution is the change in the genetic makeup of a population over time. 4 primary forces drive this process: mutation, natural selection, genetic drift, and gene flow. Mutation is a random change in the genetic code that can lead to the emergence of new traits in a species. Natural selection is the process in which certain traits are more successful in reproducing and surviving than others. Genetic drift is the alteration of the frequencies of alleles in a population due to chance. Gene flow is the movement of genes from one population to another through migration. All four of these forces work together to bring about the evolutionary process. Evolutionary forces refer to the changes brought to the gene pool of a population. Gene flow is the movement of alleles from one population to another, while genetic load is the gradual buildup of deleterious alleles in a population. Genetic drift is a random change in the gene pool of a population that may be caused by a population bottleneck or the founder effect. Natural selection is the process of organisms adapting to their environment over time, and all of these forces work together to create evolutionary change. Organic evolution is the gradual alteration in the genetic composition of a population over successive generations. Natural selection plays a major role in this process. It involves the environment selecting certain individuals over others, thus, leading to changes in the descendants. This is the process that drives evolution, enabling organisms to adapt to their surroundings. Organic evolution is a process driven by the environment that allows species to adapt in order to survive. Natural selection is the process of adaptation that is caused by the environment, and can take on three forms: stabilizing, directional or disruptive selection. An example of these differing selection pressures can be seen in the fur color of an animal species, which can be altered in response to the environment. By understanding natural selection and how it can differ depending on the environment, we can gain insight into how species can adapt and evolve. Stabilizing selection, or normalizing selection, is a selection process that favors a certain range of phenotypes while eliminating extreme characteristics from both ends. It operates in a stable environment and keeps the phenotypic stability of a population over time, without causing the evolutionary changes of speciation. Rather, it works to maintain the consistency of the population. This data clearly shows that mortality rates are strongly linked to the weight of a newborn baby. In England, babies who weighed either above or below the average of 8 pounds had higher mortality rates compared to those born with the average weight. It is therefore essential to closely monitor the health of newborns to protect their safety and well-being. Organic evolution is a captivating process in which natural selection eliminates individuals from one end of the phenotypic distribution, causing the average value of fitness to move to the other end. Through this process of selection, species are able to adapt to changing environments and remain viable over time. Organic evolution is a formidable mechanism of natural selection, which molds the physical characteristics of a species over time. Giraffes provide an instance of directional selection, wherein environmental pressures favor those with longer necks, enabling them to access food sources not available to those with shorter necks. In a similar manner, mosquitoes developed resistance to DDT due to directional selection. Those individuals capable of resisting the pesticide were able to prevail over the ones that didn't, resulting in species-wide resistance to the toxic chemical. Grasping these indispensable aspects of organic evolution is essential to understanding the variety of life on our planet. Organic evolution is an intricate and involved process, and disruptive selection is a principal element of it. Disruptive selection happens when the organisms with excessive phenotypes are decided on, while the individuals with ordinary phenotype are excluded. This kind of selection is activated when a setting shifts from being homogeneous to a heterogeneous environment, which can divide a population into two or more separate subpopulations or species. Organic evolution is a powerful evolutionary process that sees natural selection causing organisms to change through time. Selection is one factor, but there are also other types of evolution that can result in divergence of organisms into two or more species. One such type is adaptive radiation, where various environmental pressures can cause subpopulations to separate and form sexually isolated new species. Evolution is far more complex than commonly thought. Significant changes can be triggered by even minor changes. For example, the moths of Biston betularia have developed light and dark-colored species in response to the environment. Likewise, finches' beaks have changed shape and two sunflower populations in California have evolved, one adapting to dry conditions and the other to wet conditions. These instances illustrate how evolution works. Gene flow is a process whereby alleles are mixed between two populations. It involves the random introduction of alleles into a population, which may be due to immigration and emigration. These processes have an impact on the allelic frequencies of both donor and recipient populations, and awareness of this is essential for comprehending the process of organic evolution. Genetic load describes the presence of destructive genes in a population, hampering its capability to persist and reproduce. These genes cause a decrease in the overall healthiness of individuals, slowing their ability to advance and intensifying their susceptibility to uncontrollable conditions. Realizing the consequences of genetic load and its effects is essential for keeping genetic variability and promoting strong populations. Genetic load refers to the overall effect of deleterious mutations acquired through evolutionary history. For instance, sickle cell anemia is an example of a gene mutation that affects an individual's DNA. The normal adult hemoglobin sequence encodes for Lu-THR-Pro-Glu-Glu-Li-Esser with a nucleotide of CTG-ACTCCT-GAG-GAG-OG-TCT, while the mutant adult hemoglobin sequence encodes for Lu-THR-Pro-Val-Glu-Li-Esser with a nucleotide of CTG-ACTCCT-GT-GAG-OG-TCT, displaying a 6 to 9 nucleotide difference between the two. This difference illustrates the impact of genetic load on an individual's DNA. The human body is a fascinating illustration of the strength of evolution. Even a gene that is disadvantageous and causes anemia when present in 2 copies may give resistance to malaria when present in only 1 copy. This is only one example of the numerous evolutionary procedures which have impacted the world we inhabit. Genetic drift, also known as the Sewell-Wright effect, is a change in the frequency of a gene that is solely based on chance in small populations. Moving on to our next slide, we will look at how the Internet has revolutionized communication by connecting and enabling people from diverse backgrounds to communicate with each other. Genetic drift is a phenomenon in which the genetic composition of a population changes over time due to random or chance events. This usually leads to a decrease of the number of alleles within the population, thereby reducing the overall genetic variation. Organic evolution is based on the principle of allele frequency, which can result in the fixation or loss of that allele in small populations as the probability of losing an allele by chance is greater. Examining the founder effect and bottleneck effect helps us to better understand the probability of a population reaching its endpoint. The founder effect occurs when a new population is created by just a few individuals, often leading to a different genetic makeup from the original population. The bottleneck effect is when a population experiences a dramatic decrease in size, which could lead to a loss of genetic variety. Both of these effects can significantly influence the chances of a population reaching its goal. This quote speaks to the concept of the founder effect, which occurs when a small group of individuals from a certain population migrate to an isolated region and form a new colony. It is a key reminder of the importance of having an understanding and appreciation of different cultures in order to foster international collaboration and respect worldwide. Organic evolution involves the transmission of genetic information between successive generations. This process is evidenced by the allelic frequencies present in the current descendants of a given population, which are more similar to the founders than to their ancestral population. This is exemplified in the Red Indian tribe, in which nearly 100% of the population is O+V blood type, indicating that the progenitors of the Red Indian tribe were largely O+V and that they have tended to restrict their interbreeding with other populations. The bottleneck effect refers to a situation wherein natural disasters can cause a significant decrease in the size of a population. As a consequence, the survivors may possess a markedly different genetic composition than the original population. This difference can potentially cause a species to evolve and significantly alter its current state over time. The bottleneck effect is when a population undergoes a sharp decrease in size, often resulting from a significant environmental event. The resultant smaller population is often left with a fraction of the traits which were present in the original population, producing a wider range of possibilities for variation in the new population. This phenomenon should be taken into account when examining organic evolution. Polydactyl dwarf individuals are a rare occurrence in the Old Order Amish population of Lancaster in the United States. Scientists are still trying to understand why this happens and have extensively documented physical characteristics and genetic makeup to gain a better insight into the process of organic evolution. Evolution is a process that has been occurring for a lengthy period, characterized by cladogenesis, anagenesis and stasis. Cladogenesis is the process of one species splitting to form two or more distinct species, while anagenesis is the process of one species transforming into one or more different species. Stasis, on the other hand, is the process where new species remain unchanged over time. These processes can take place within a single lineage and may result in new species over time. Organic evolution is an integral part of nature. Allopatric speciation is a major mode of species formation, where the process is mainly a result of geographical isolation. This could be between two populations which over time become distinctly different species, or it could involve one population that splits into two isolated populations and evolve in different ways. Geographical isolation is an essential factor in the speciation process. Organic evolution involves the transformation of populations of various species from a shared origin over a period of time. Sympatric speciation is a form of speciation wherein distinct species come into being within the same geographic area without being separated geographically. This happens usually when two populations have different reproductive systems and cannot interbreed, thereby stopping gene flow between the two populations. Microevolution is the study of small changes in the genetic material of a single population of a species, such as changes in the frequency of certain traits, such as eye color. On the other hand, macroevolution is the study of the large changes that eventually lead to the emergence of new species, such as the development of a butterfly from an egg. Generally, macroevolutionary changes occur when two populations of the same species become isolated from one another, which eventually leads to the formation of two distinct species within the same family. Organic evolution is a process of change in living organisms over time, which in this instance is demonstrated by the splitting of the sunflower population in California into two distinct subpopulations. This process is known as cladogenesis, which is analogous to the branching in a phylogenetic tree, and can encompass the evolution of new species. The sunflower population has effectively diverged from its ancestor species and adapted to the environmental conditions present in California. It is essential to comprehend the concepts of genetic drift and bottlenecking in order to gain profound insight into the mechanism of organic evolution. Genetic drift is a change in gene frequency caused by random events in a small population, while bottlenecking is reduction in population size leading to decrease of genetic diversity within the population. Comprehending these two variations and their outcomes aids in the comprehension of how evolution functions. Sewell-Wright effect is a crucial notion in organic evolution, referring to the process of genes permeating population and how they evolve over time. Basically, it explains the part of four particular components in boosting genetic variety inside a population: genetic balance, gene flow, genetic load and genetic drift. All these factors are indispensable in designating the genetic constitution of a population, allowing it to conform to varying environmental circumstances. In this way, Sewell-Wright's effect is necessary to comprehending how evolution operates. Organic evolution has given rise to man as we know him. Over the course of its development, biological processes have molded the physical dimensions, behavior, and intelligence of humans. It has been proposed that the initial humans evolved in Africa about 6 million years ago. Since then, Homo sapiens have radiated to all parts of the world and persist to expand and diversify. Despite our shared origin, the world's cultural and linguistic disparities bear witness to how varied our societies can be. To gain knowledge on the intricacies of the history of humankind, many disciplines must be studied, ranging from biology to anthropology to sociology. Organic evolution began with the origin of life around 3,000 million years ago. About 2,000 million years later, the first cellular forms of life emerged, followed by the development of invertebrates around 500 million years ago. During the Ordovician period, jawless fishes evolved, which has continued evolution since then. Tyrannosaurus rex was an impressive feat of evolution, as it was the apex predator of its era. It was a giant, standing at approximately 20 feet tall with an array of deadly, dagger-like teeth. Its strong hind legs allowed it to move swiftly and efficiently, making it a powerful and unstoppable apex predator. Scientists suggest that dinosaurs such as T-Rex descended from fish with stout and lobe-like fins, and further evolved into amphibians that reigned over the terrestrial environment. Consequently, the success of T-Rex is a showcase of organic evolution's strength. The evolution of the ichthyosaurus is certainly an interesting topic. This ancient marine reptile was part of a bigger transition from land reptiles to aquatic life, and had characteristics of both fishes and reptiles. It was well adapted to life in the ocean, with its streamlined body and flipper-like limbs allowing it to move gracefully in the water and its oar-shaped tail propelling it to swim faster and more efficiently than its predecessors. Studying the ichthyosaurus helps us gain insight into how animals can adapt to their environment. At the close of the Cretaceous period, the extinction of the dinosaurs paved the way for a radically different epoch in the Earth's evolutionary timeline, that of mankind. From the capacity to communicate, think, and realize one's own existence to the continual growth of industry, technology, and cultural complexity, humans have without a doubt been the most successful species to ever tread the surface of the planet. Hominoid species such as Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus have been around for 15 million years. Dryopithecus was more ape-like and Ramapithecus more man-like, displaying traits of gorillas and chimpanzees respectively. Along the evolutionary path of our species, change and adaptation have been key, with each species carrying its own unique legacy in human history. A few fossil bones discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania, similar to those of modern man, indicate that hominids, man-like primates, could have been roaming East African plains around 3 to 4 million years ago. These hominids stood approximately 4 feet tall and likely walked upright. This has shed new light on our evolutionary past and provided further evidence for the hypothesis that man descended from primates. Ancestors of our own species, the Australopithecus, first appeared in the fossil record around 2 million years ago. Possessing distinctive ape-like features, they also showed initial signs of anatomical developments that were to be further developed by later species such as Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens. The fossil evidence allows us to trace the evolution of modern humans all the way back to the grasslands of East Africa. Homo habilis, a species of human-like beings, is the earliest member of our genus, Homo, and has been found to appear in the fossil record around 2 million years ago. Distinguishing characteristics of Homo habilis include the use of sharp stone tools and a largely fruit-based diet. Through numerous generations, our ancestors were able to effectively adapt and evolve to eventually become modern humans. Homo sapiens have a much larger cranial capacity than other hominin species, on average about 1,300 cubic centimeters. This large cranial capacity facilitated the development of higher cognitive processes, like language, abstract thinking, and problem-solving capacities, in Homo sapiens compared to other hominin species. This difference has enabled Homo sapiens to gain more influence and control over their environment more successfully than other hominin species. Discovery of Homo erectus in Java in 1891 gave us insight into the evolutionary process. This species had a cranial capacity of roughly 900 cc, and began to consume meat as their main source of nutrition. Homo erectus and Homo ergaster were the first human species to migrate out of Africa, signifying a new era of human evolution. Homo neanderthalensis was an ancient species of humans who inhabited East and Central Asia between 100,000 to 40,000 years ago. Characterized by their larger cranial capacity of approximately 1,400 cc, they used animal skins to clothe themselves and also buried their dead, indicating their highly developed cognitive abilities. Humankind has made an incredible journey over the past 75,000 to 10,000 years, beginning with the earliest forms of Homo sapiens in Africa and culminating with the spread of their descendants across the continents. This period of time saw Homo sapiens evolve into distinct races, a fascinating example of organic evolution which has resulted in us becoming the remarkable human species we are today. Cro-Magnon man is believed to have developed approximately 18,000 years ago. It is seen as the beginning for the development of modern human society, although they did not practice agriculture. Archaeologists have discovered the earliest evidence of agriculture around 10,000 years ago, signifying the move to more settled dwellings and lifestyles. This period was a significant turning point for the progression of human civilization. Throughout evolution, our species has gone through great change and adaptation. Out of all species that ever existed, humans have successfully survived and flourished in all corners of the world. Our capability to adjust to varied circumstances, create advanced societies and put to use technology, which our predecessors could hardly envision, has enabled us to survive and discover success. This is possible due to our highly intelligent brains and intricate social dynamics which have enabled us to persevere and thrive amidst changing conditions. Organic evolution has been responsible for some of the most fascinating developments in the natural world. This unit will explore the evolution of our species, Homo sapiens, beginning with one of our early predecessors, Cro-Magnon man. Cro-Magnon man has characteristics of both Cro-Magnon and Homo sapiens, such as tall stature, large brain, and prominent chin. Fossils of this species have been found in modern-day Spain and France, predating the Homo sapiens species. Eventually, Homo sapiens advanced and populated